Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Are students supposed to join individually?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
This time they'll join individually.
Okay. We'll just wait for 2-3 minutes more and then we'll start.
Okay, sir. ಹುಡುಗರು ನನಗೆ ಸರ್ 3 ಜನ ಎಲ್ರು ಇಬ್ರು
So shall we start now?
14 students are there. You can start, sir, by the time they join.
Okay, all right. Okay, good afternoon, everybody. What we'll do today as a part of the topic is we'll see how project management and what is project management and what are the possibilities in the area of project management, right? Now, technically, project management is quite a broader topic, and any skill sets that you learn, any functional skill sets, be it technical or non-technical, in work, project management is something which is really, really critical. And typically, in case of project management, there are a few things which we need to keep in mind, is what we will see today. As to in terms of what are the strategic priorities of project management, typically how do we avoid conflicts or objections, or how should we how to facilitate what went well, what did not go well, those kind of discussions. So very fundamentals of project management, foundations. And then we'll also see more in terms of how do you typically use project management as a career, so that one, you learn the foundations, and second, you will also get a chance to understand what kind of possible career opportunities are there in project management as well, right? So that it helps you whenever you are looking at some sort of options and career, etc., and stuff like that, right? So I think these are the two things we'll cover. The way we will do it is we have videos and detailed modules which I will play. I'll share my screen and I'll play. We'll listen to them. We'll go ahead and have, if there are any questions, etc., we'll kind of answer and interact. And then by the end of this, you will understand what project management and what kind of career options, etc., you can choose, right? So this is how typically we will go ahead with, right? So having said that, I will start sharing my screen. Okay, and is my screen visible now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and tell me if you are able to hear as well. I'll just play it once.
What if you had a way to avoid making the...
Is it audible?
It's audible.
Okay, fine. All right, great. I think we are all ready. So let's start the presentation.
What if you had a way to avoid making the same mistakes over and over, and at the same time, learn to repeat the things that worked out well? We live in a world where to survive and thrive, we're pushed to deliver more with fewer resources. So we rush through and don't pause to reflect on the results. Then, when the same problems repeat, we get frustrated. Well, I'm here to show you a different way and help you make better decisions in every project. My name is Sam Yankelevich. As a global operations executive, I've seen great successes in teams that take the discipline of lessons learned seriously and make it their strategic priority. So I'm going to give you a step-by-step guide for running a lessons learned meeting and show you how to maintain the discipline of lessons learned to achieve excellent results. Stick around and learn how to increase your effectiveness by getting past obstacles that get in the way of practicing lessons learned.
So very important aspect of project management.
I'm sure
what are the lessons learned and how do you use that lesson learned to improve further? And once you start doing that, your entire project management capability and skills comes into the picture. So this is what we will learn from this instructor. So let's listen.
Sure, you've heard the saying, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, in projects, insanity is when we rush from one project to another without stopping to capture lessons learned along the way. Lessons learned are just that, the lessons we learn while working on a project. They provide an opportunity to use the knowledge gained and apply it forward to avoid making the same mistakes while also repeating what went well. In a nutshell, lessons learned help you make better decisions in the future and make you and your business more effective. Here's the thing, there's a lot of knowledge sitting in people's heads, in the minds of your project team and its stakeholders. And unless this knowledge is tapped, it's of no value. A lessons learned meeting is when you extract that knowledge and make it usable and valuable. This hidden value in every project can be surfaced by asking questions like, what did we do well? What could we have done better? What can we recommend to a future project team?
So just stopping and going back a few slides, very important slide here. So please note it down that typically a lessons learned meeting, right? What did we do well? What could we have done better? What could we recommend for the future is a very important framework and a starting point for understanding, how do you proceed further, right?
Your project team. You may have heard of an after-action review, a post-mortem, or a retrospective review. These are all based on the same idea of capturing valuable lessons from projects to improve future outcomes. Whatever you call them, holding these meetings when things go well is just as important as when they don't.
Very important. So these meetings is not only about when things go well, but even when things do not go well as well. So irrespective of whether things are going right or wrong, I think having these meetings and asking these questions, what is going well, what is not, what can we do for the future is important. So it's always an always on and an iterative process. So it's never stagnant. And that's something which is critical to keep in mind.
I lived this with a European automaker who recently launched 4 different vehicles over an 18-month period with 4 different launch teams. We ran lessons learned meetings with the first launch team and shared the lessons with the next 3 teams. Then Team 2 did the same for Team 3 and so on. The results? With each launch, there were fewer quality issues and fewer delays, and Team 4 boasted a practically flawless launch. Successful project teams use lessons learned throughout the life of a project, before kickoff, during, and after. You don't have to wait until the end of a project to repeat successful practices and steer away from problems. To grow and remain competitive, it makes sense that we take responsibility for our future, stop to capture lessons learned, and uncover the hidden value in every project. If doing lessons learned has such an upside and clear benefits, why isn't everyone doing it? Good question. Perhaps my gray hair gives it away. But I've been around the block a few times and have worked with many project teams. Here are the main objections I hear and how you can overcome them. The number 1 objection is, we don't have time. In reality, time is not an infinite resource. And if we learn how to avoid repeating mistakes in the future, we'll be saving time, much more time than will be spent on the process of lessons learned. So instead, I suggest you change your mindset to, we don't have time not to gather and study the lessons learned. Another excuse I hear is that just talking about things is not real work. Yet pausing to reflect is one of the habits of great performing teams. Here's what I mean. If you were cutting a tree with a dull, blunt saw, you'd probably pause to sharpen the saw to be more effective, right? Same thing here. Pausing to reflect and learn will help you make better decisions.
So again, very critical. While a lot of teams, they say that just talking about things is not real work. True, maybe, but in order to do the real thing, you also need to kind of pause and think what you need to do, right? And that's the mindset approach is what the author is kind of talking about over here.
In the future and become more effective. And how about this objection? It's not our job. Sorry to bust your myth, but it's everyone's responsibility to learn from every project and share with future project teams so everyone can repeat the positives and not repeat the mistakes. Plus, remember, lessons learned is an integral part of project management.
So very critical. So even it's not only about project management, even if if you are working in a group or if you have to work on certain project or tasks or assignments, a lot of times folks would say, this is not my job, this is somebody else's job, right? But that's not the right attitude. Yes, in a group, there would be folks who are specialized to do certain things. But at the end of the day, it's a group. So everybody should know about what's happening in a group together. So it's not about, it is not our job. It is about mindsets, like, what have we learned, and as a group, how can we take it forward? So very important thing to keep in mind as well.
So it is part of the job. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, is another typical objection, perhaps meaning to say everything is perfect, so no need to change anything. Not true. Even when your project is on time and meets the budget and the deliverables, you'll find the things that contributed to the success that you can share with other teams for the benefit of your business. And finally, I don't know how to do it. This is an honest concern, and the way to get past it is to develop the skills of your project team members for running lessons learned meetings, and this course will help you do that. Given these points, it's clear that the time you invest in capturing lessons learned will pay off and in the long run, benefit you and your organization.
So the key takeaway would be, if you think I don't know how to do it, it's not an answer that's acceptable. Even if you don't know how to do it, there are tools and there are resources and there are team members with whom you can spend time, you can do self-learning, and always try to upskill and be on the top. Because in today's industry, it is so competitive that unless you are always upskilled, or unless you are always staying true to your craft, you will always fall behind, because somebody else will always move on, right? So while we are not masters of everything, but whatever skills do we have, or whatever we think we need to really upskill, we should make a proactive effort to see how this works and get that built in, right? And then with the rigor of the entire project and the work, etc., we tend to do well. So that is what the main takeaway was from the typical objections to lessons learned and how to overcome them. That was what it is, right? Let's now listen to how to run what went well. Like typically the scenarios when things go well, how do you present that, or what do you think about it, right?
What would it be worth if you could pick out the things that went well on a project so that they could be repeated in future projects? Most people would agree it would be well worth the effort. Of course, gathering that information will take a team effort. So let's go step by step through the process and see how to effectively gather lessons learned. The first step is to schedule a meeting and invite the team. It makes good sense to collect lessons learned immediately after the last project milestone has been completed, while experiences are still fresh in everyone's mind and before they've moved on to their next project. You might want to include suppliers and customers, but let me suggest you not invite people who might be intimidating or whose presence could stifle discussion. Choose a meeting place that makes collaboration easy and appealing and where there's enough space for people to move around. Make sure you have adequate technology in case someone has to participate remotely. The second step is to create an agenda and designate who will moderate the meeting. Share the agenda with the participants so everyone knows the schedule and what they came to accomplish. The moderator should be someone different than the project manager, and their role is to run the meeting, ensure valuable lessons are identified, and keep people on track with the agenda. Third, work with the moderator to clarify the types of lessons you want to capture and define the criteria to what success means. Here's the thing. Most teams focus only on whether the project budget, schedule, or deliverables were met. But what you're really looking for are successful methodologies, behaviors, or attributes that can be repeated in future projects. For example, some of the most common attributes I hear of are about cross-functional team collaboration and clear, timely communication with all stakeholders. These types of attributes can help generate value to your business when applied in future projects. Fourth, ask each participant to write down 3 to 5 attributes, methods, or anything else they noticed were practiced successfully. Have people work individually in order to avoid groupthink. Next, split participants into groups to discuss what they've come up with, but no more than 6 people in a group. In my experience, larger groups tend to complicate the discussion, while smaller groups encourage everyone's voice to be heard. Ask the following and capture the responses on a whiteboard or flip chart. Share a success from what you wrote down. Tell us when and where you observed it. And most important, why do you think it went well? Since getting to the deeper reasons for success is what you want to capture, use the 5 why methodology. Here's an example. The team completed software testing ahead of schedule. Why? The debugging was done earlier than planned. Why? The testing environment was built early. Why? The supplier provided a test app exactly to the specification. Why? Because testing specifications agreed to at kickoff. So the lesson learned was, we have a better chance of staying on schedule if everyone agrees on testing specification at kickoff. Repeat the process for everyone in your group and for each item on their list. Now it's time for the group leaders to combine all the group's input and get the team to agree which lessons are key items that future teams will benefit from. I suggest you use a whiteboard so everyone's on the same page. Ask what their advice would be to future teams based on the lessons that were captured. The answers to this question will be essential for expressing each lesson in a clear and unambiguous way that can be understood by other project teams. Now you can enter the lessons into the project management knowledge base. And finally, celebrate the achievement with your team. Celebration helps demonstrate respect for the people that have learned together. And when a senior level manager sponsors the celebration, it energizes people and solidifies the importance of practicing the discipline of lessons learned, and it can help lessons learned become part of your company culture.
The key takeaways from here is, when, for example, you are kind of a lead, you are a project manager or you're managing a particular project and you have different groups of people. First is how to create smaller groups of people and ask them for ideation. One of the key things that you heard about is, like, if the group is large, the conversations go in a diverse direction. So first, form smaller groups. Give them, ask them examples of what went well or their experiences. Gather everything together. Ask questions. You saw that metrics, why, and why, right? So why did this go well? Why did this go well, etc. So get on answers, get things together, create a complete plan based on the inputs from the team members, and that's where you would go forward. So that's the key takeaway from how to manage what went well kind of in a meeting scenario, right? And we'll see a real case study as to running, how what went meeting well, whatever we saw or heard in the last thing, to see how a real-time example can actually be, right? So then you can relate to, if you are managing a project, and by the way, when I say you are managing the project, it doesn't mean that it has to be in an organization. It could be even in your college. It could be even in any of the functions. A lot of times there are college fests that are organized. A lot of times there are college communities that are which take up certain kind of project, etc. So everything that we do in life is actually in terms of a project management. So if you are able to apply this, then you will see how you are breaking things down and ensuring that the timely speed of delivery is kind of ensured for anything that you do, right? So let's look at a case study which is more industry based, but I think the knowledge from here can be applied in your day-to-day life as well, whether as students or whether as professionals, right? So let's hear that.
I recently worked with a company that designs and manufactures industrial equipment. They had just finished an important project to develop equipment that could be sold as kits to distributors who would then assemble equipment based on the needs of the end user. Due to the project complexity, the launch date was missed by 6 months. The meeting was conducted according to the outline, and the team identified 3 key lessons and turned them into actionable lessons learned. Lesson number 1, due to the cost objective, the team found a new low-cost supplier for a critical component. And when they dug deeper using the 5 whys, they realized that it was due to early engagement with the supplier. The lesson learned was that early engagement with a critical supplier yielded a lower than budgeted cost of the component. Lesson number 2, a clever QR code traceability method for each kit part provided more accurate traceability. When the team did their 5 whys, They realized the idea resulted from a joint cross-functional team exploration. The lesson learned was that cross-functional team exploration yielded the use of QR codes for kit traceability. And lesson number 3, marketing was able to produce brochures for distributors in record time by using high-resolution images taken from CAD models. In this case, they identified the open collaboration between the design engineers and the marketing team as the reason. The lesson learned was that close collaboration between engineering and marketing yielded speed and cost savings for the product catalog. All of these lessons were entered into the project knowledge base. What was the value to the business for investing time in this meeting? Time and money. The team has adapted these lessons for the benefit of their current project, where they're developing a new kit version for a different model. And the learnings from the previous project have helped them stay on schedule and on budget. Think of the value you can bring to your business by capturing successful practices that a future team can adopt to improve their outcomes. Okay, you know how to discover what went well with your project. So now we need to see how to learn what could have gone better. And as you might expect, the two meetings have a lot of similarities. Keep in mind that depending on the scope of your project, this might just follow along right after the what went well meeting. If it was a short project, you might do both in one day. But if it was a bigger project, you might need a second day. In either case, this meeting follows much the same process as the what went well meeting. Start by scheduling this meeting right after you're done collecting your lessons learned for your successes. But run this as a separate meeting. You want people to be focused on one thing at a time. Be sure to have a clear agenda and make sure everyone understands the objectives. And just as with the prior meeting, you'll need a moderator, and if that person did a good job, I suggest you keep them in that role. When collecting lessons learned for what could have gone better, sometimes emotions run high and people might try to blame others. So set the stage by reminding everyone that we're all here to learn and to treat each other as colleagues. Remind them the goal is to learn what could have gone better. It's not about pointing fingers. The moderator should make it clear that the meeting is about finding the underlying reasons why the budget, the scope, or the project deliverables did not meet expectations. Ask people to individually write down 3 to 5 things they experienced that could have gone better. You can suggest things like scope creep, people not showing up on time, or lack of stakeholder involvement as possible entries. Asking them to work individually avoids groupthink and results in more ideas for discussion. Once everyone has finished, split participants into groups of no more than 6 people. Keeping the number of people small will help make the discussion flow better and allows time for everyone in the group to contribute. Ask that each group assign a person to ask questions that jot down the information on a whiteboard or a flip chart. Each person should be asked to share something they wrote down that was not successful. They should talk about the factors they experienced that should be avoided in future projects, and examples of where they observed the problem. Then they should be asked, why do you think it could have gone better? What were the underlying reasons that things didn't work out as planned? And, as with the prior meeting, you can use the 5 whys to narrow down the answer to the deeper root causes and identify the lesson learned. Once all the groups are done, get each of the leaders to combine all of the group's inputs to the main team board and unify the categories. Now you can have a discussion with the whole team to determine which are the top lessons that can benefit a future team. For each of the lessons you've chosen, ask what advice can you give a future project team? As people answer, the moderator should capture how the lesson can be written to include context and descriptions that can help a future team. Now you can enter the lessons into the project knowledge base. And finally, celebrate the learning with your team to reinforce the importance of lessons learned and help embed the practice in the business culture. You now have an easy to follow step-by-step process that you can try out next time you meet to discuss what could have gone better with your team.
So the key takeaway from this lesson and also the previous lesson, like, how to facilitate what could have gone better and how to facilitate what went well, right? In both the scenarios, the important point to keep in mind is, as a project leader, first, you would need to identify smaller groups, and within those smaller groups, certain leaders. So basically, you distribute. Ask each group to kind of come up with the learnings, and collect everything together, bring everything together, and then in the master whiteboard or the master sheet, you start putting all the points. Look at, like, what are the common elements, club them together. Look at what are different, you bucket them different. And by the end of this exercise, you will realize that there is a clear call to action in terms of what went well, what could have been better, what needs to be done, etc. Right? So a very critical aspect of managing a project are these things. And that is where, like, the skill sets come in as to, if a task is given to you, how would you go about it? How would the group go about it? These are the things and the steps that you would need to follow and then proceed ahead, right? This is the key learning from the two topics here, right? We'll see a case study of what could have gone better in the real time, like, what happened. Let's hear what that talks about.
Let's continue reviewing the case of my industrial manufacturing client. They finished the What Went Well meeting late in the afternoon, so the team met the next day to collect lessons for what could have gone better. Since the agenda had already been circulated, the project manager set the tone by reminding everyone to remain positive, that blaming was unacceptable, and that bringing up mistakes was of great value to the business because future projects could benefit by avoiding similar mistakes. Even though the launch date was missed by 6 months, people were in a good collaborative mood since they had just worked as a team and together had uncovered very valuable lessons. The meeting was conducted according to the outline, and here's some of the things they discovered and how those were turned into actionable lessons learned. Number 1, because of scope creep, time was lost in reworking the component designs. When they dug deeper with the 5 whys, they identified how the head office kept adding new requirements even after the project was well into development. The lesson learned was that a commitment from top management to maintain the original scope once the project is started can help keep the timeline on schedule. And this can
happen multiple times. In everywhere, whenever, like, you see, we start with a scope of a project, and over the time, it kind of keeps changing and changing and changing. The lesson learned is important here, that, like, if a project scope is defined and yet it keeps changing again and again, then there is obviously going to be a delay. So sticking on to your initial project scope helps to maintain the timeline and on schedule. So critical thing to keep in mind.
Number 2, during testing, the team identified they had selected a component that their distributors would not be able to assemble without special tooling. So identifying the right component created an unplanned delay. The main contributing cause was the lack of mock-up trials with their operation team that would have identified the problem a lot earlier. The lesson learned was that coordinating closely with operations, especially to simulate assembly processes during the product development, can help identify problems earlier and allow time for recovery. And number 3, one of the purchase components that made up the product kit had technical specifications that were challenging for the supplier. The cause analysis pointed to late supplier engagement. The lesson learned was that when new technical challenges are involved, early supplier participation can help avoid delays to the overall project timeline. All of these lessons and recommendations were entered into the database to help future teams. I have often found that lessons captured during a What Went Well meeting can be correlated with similar lessons for what could have gone better. For example, the topic of early supplier engagement came up in both sessions, so that's definitely a lesson that can bring value to your customer and the business. On a side note, my client reports that a new product development team just started a new project, and they have agreed with operations to build time into their schedule to run mock-up trials that can help detect problems early on. Once again, proof that investing time to capture lessons learned can pay off by improving the effectiveness of future projects and the success of your organization.
So let's now hear about the lessons learned and the best practices. Typically, how do you implement these best practices, and what should you do? Then whatever we have heard so far in terms of learning how to facilitate what went well versus what could have gone better. How should we design our entire project structure? How should we design it, etc. So let's capture this. And where do we capture? How do we capture? How do we ask the organizations to adopt what we have captured? How do we ask organizations to try the best practices is what we will learn over here. And this is a very critical section. The next 10 minutes of videos that you will see, please note it down very, very carefully, the points, because this is where you will actually get into the application part of it, right? So let's hear.
One of the most common questions asked by project managers is, why didn't I hear about this problem sooner? That's a good question. While most teams associate a lessons learned meeting with the end of a project, there's immense value in reviewing lessons before and during the project. Before a project kickoff, for example, it's safe to assume that someone has already done something similar, and you can leverage that to avoid costly mistakes. Search within your organization for peers that may have ample experience on similar projects. Organizations can form virtual networks you can access when there's a need to consult for a new project. Once you connect with one or more peers that can help, invite them to a meeting before the kickoff and listen closely. What they have to say may help improve your project. In addition, if your organization has a project knowledge database, you can also search for lessons other teams have recorded that might be useful and add any new ones you have learned during the discussion at kickoff. Keep in mind that the information you find there may be applied to a project in a different context, and therefore it will be up to you to adapt these lessons to your specific project. For example, you find that a product development project was successful because they avoided scope creep by enlisting the help of senior management. You can adapt the same type of help to avoid scope creep in your project, which might be about developing a software application. And how about during the project? Between the beginning and end of a project, there are different milestones, each of which offer an opportunity to pause and reflect on what was supposed to happen and what actually happened. Why were there differences? And most important, what did we learn? The answers to these questions can help you make course corrections. For example, if people are not communicating or not meeting their commitments, you can correct these patterns of behavior before they negatively impact your project. I have found that teams that pause to reflect during the project learn together. Then changes can be made in the next phase of the project since everyone is already aligned with the new ideas.
Pausing and reflecting is important. So it's not about starting today and not pausing and reflecting or regrouping till the end of the project. It has to be an iterative process, because at each stage, the more you learn and the more you share, the entire team starts learning. And this is the reason why these periodic lessons or periodic meetings or what we call as different in the industry terms as scrums or meetings are kind of set where every time there is way to learn quickly and adopt, right? And of course, there are various agile methodologies of project management. What we are learning right now is probably only the basics. As you get more in depth into the different types of project management or the styles, right? You will see how efficiently certain methods are adopted, which helps to manage the project till the end. But then today we are just learning a few of the basics, right? So important thing to keep in mind is stop, pause, and reflect, discuss, learn, and then move on.
Doing lessons learned during the project helps avoid knowledge loss when a team member is transferred before the end of the project. It can be useful to run a debrief with the person leaving to ensure any potential gaps can be covered. Teams should be clear about the objective being to find answers and not place blame. Reviewing lessons learned before and during a project will help make your current project even more successful, and you'll no longer need to ask, why didn't I hear about this sooner? It takes a combination of people, process, and systems to effectively convert data into information and then transform that information into knowledge that can be capitalized by your business. But your organization will only benefit from lessons learned if people access your database. So to encourage your project teams to look for valuable information, you need to build a collection that's easy to access and search with lessons that can be understood and applied. Let me illustrate what that looks like. Think of the person that might be searching for past lessons as your knowledge customer. How easy will it be for them to search and find the right information at the right time to make a better decision? What level of explicit detail can help clarify the context? Detailed examples and illustrations can be very helpful to accomplish this. Then create categories that can be used to search for specific types of lessons captured. In projects, categories can be associated to the budget, the schedule, or the quality of the deliverables. And they can be further broken down into subcategories such as scope definition, communication management, stakeholder management, quality planning, or cost estimating. In addition, you may want to have separate categories to capture specific technical lessons learned, product-specific information, or process improvements. Think, what categories would be helpful for my knowledge customers to find relevant information? The third step is to link each lesson captured to a person that can provide additional details to help a future project succeed. No matter how explicit the written lesson is, there will be a lot more details in the head of someone who actually worked on the project where the lesson was captured. Fourth, create a process to define and standardize the steps for entering lessons learned into the database, including who will be responsible to enter the information, who should manage the database, and who will cover any data security needs. Fifth, consider technology. While there are numerous IT solutions that your organization can adopt, I suggest you find software that can support each of the previous points adequately. The system should be easy to train on, reliable, and easily managed by the existing resources of your organization. And finally, if people don't know the lessons learned database is there will be no benefit to your business. So make sure it is advertised and shared with everyone in your organization. Remember, your goal is to benefit future projects, and that the actual value of any lesson comes when it can be adopted. So create a process that can be easily searched by people, where they can find the knowledge when they need it, and which is supported by a reliable IT system. Arie de Hoos, the former executive of Royal Dutch Shell, once said, "The ability to learn faster than your competitors may be your only sustainable advantage."
Very important to keep in mind, a very important lesson. The ability to learn faster, right? It's something like, which will faster than a competition in the industry, maybe the only sustainable competition, because probably all the competition is at the same level, but how quickly you are able to learn and adopt and make those changes and be agile is going to be important. Hence, this quote is very, very critical to keep in mind. So it's all about how we are developing our mindset to be much more agile, right? So that's important. This is what it says.
Maybe your only sustainable advantage. So let me ask, are you going to sit and watch your competitors gain a competitive advantage and not put up a fight? Let's face it, the knowledge economy is making organizations rethink their strategy to stay ahead. As Mr. de Hoos says, you need to make learning an integral part of your organization, and projects are one area where you can make this happen. Many of the organizations I've worked with focus mostly on their short-term project outcomes. In contrast, Toyota has made learning part of their DNA and their business strategy, and it has helped them become a leader in their industry. Here are 3 key practices I've learned from Toyota that you can adapt to your project management. Number 1, think of every project as an experiment that will lead to learning, and convert tacit knowledge that's sitting in people's heads into explicit knowledge that can be implemented into the business and used in future projects to increase value for the customer. Number 2, balance short-term project results with long-term customer value by taking time to reflect on the causes of successes or failures in your project. Allow time for reflection and learning into every project. Number 3, promote the formation of communities of learning throughout your organization by combining people networks and shared project knowledge bases. Keep in mind, knowledge transfer is mostly a human activity that is aided by technology. In fact, you can encourage teams to embrace the practice by including it in your project definition. For example, a team I recently coached defined a project as a temporary venture with the goal of creating a defined product or service that also contributes to the continual development of our customer, our organization, and our team members. We achieve this by looking for hidden value based on the lessons learned in each project and sharing these with our organization and our stakeholders. And how about incentives to encourage the adoption of lessons learned? Think about a reward system that can help encourage the integration of lessons learned into the business strategy. Getting your organizational leadership directly involved in reviewing lessons learned and then rewarding the teams will drive this home. Companies like ConocoPhillips or Syngenta have successfully implemented reward schemes for knowledge that has been applied to future projects and that has provided new opportunities for business growth. And finally, celebrations. Anytime a top leader sponsors a celebration for lessons learned, a very strong message is being sent encouraging the investment of time to reflect on and gather lessons learned. In order to survive and thrive in the knowledge economy, make learning an integral part of your strategy and make lessons learned your competitive advantage. We are living in the knowledge economy. It is the learners who will inherit the future, while the knowers will find themselves at a big disadvantage with their competitors. Using lessons learned is a way to capitalize on the value of your knowledge to make better decisions in future projects and keep an edge on your competitors. If you've never run a lessons learned meeting, give it a try. Start by creating your own definition of what a project is, one that helps encourage the practice of capturing lessons learned. Remember to look for lessons from previous projects before your next project kickoff. Always be thinking, what advice can I give another project team? What should they repeat? What should they avoid? I've given you a proven recipe, but feel free to modify it to meet your needs. In the long run, it's your choice. Will you be a learner or a knower? Give this valuable process a try on your next project to become more effective and achieve a significant competitive advantage.
Okay. So the key takeaway from the last part of the lesson is you need to think of a couple of points. One is it's a knowledge economy. So which means that we always need to keep constantly upskilling ourselves. That is one. Second is project management is something which is not necessarily only related to technical project management. It could be any cross-functional, but wherever it is or however it is, you need to ensure that there is always that systematic way of approach, that is sharing the knowledge, discussing what went well, what did not go well, etc. And then accordingly plan the project to kind of execute, right? So these are the key takeaways from this lesson altogether in terms of a larger overview of what project management is all about, right? Now, while we have studied, while you have listened to this, it is also important to understand that what kind of careers can you kind of look into project management? What are the various possibilities, right? And we'll see some sort of overviews that we have in terms of maybe the larger picture in terms of if you want to take up a project management as a career, then what are the possible options that you may want to think of, or how should you think of in your mind if you want to really adopt a project management kind of a career as well, right? This will also help you to think that through. So let's kind of listen to a set of industry experts talking about the various options of project management career. Let's see how what examples they kind of share, some sort of a real-time case studies, right? In terms of how you can build it, and let's see how we are able to map it back with what we have learned in the earlier class, right? So let me share my screen and let me start playing the video.
Do you want to get a foothold in one of the hottest professions today? Then look no further. Project management is the career for you. Hi, my name is Oliver Yarbrough. I'm an author, speaker, and trainer in project management and growth strategies to increase value. I'm here to help you develop a clear plan of action so you can successfully navigate your project management journey. You'll discover how to transition into project management, develop a strong brand, and advance your project management career. The only thing left for you to do is to get started. So let's go.
So while throughout this entire presentation, please make note of the important points that Oliver is going to be talking over here, right? Very, very important. You may not want to capture everything, the entire video or all the transcripts, but very, very important to note as to what kind of options are available, what should one do, etc. Because then when you start looking in these notes later and thinking of how your career in project management is a possibility, you will find it helpful, right? So let's listen.
Own your career, but rent your job. I know, that's a bold statement, but let me explain. Think of your career as more akin to leading your very own business instead of working a standalone job. Now, don't get me wrong, a job is fine and dandy. Trust me, I've worked my fair share earlier in my career. But here's the thing, a job is a temporary endeavor, or better yet, a project. And when I say temporary, I mean it could last anywhere from a few weeks to several years. However, the intent isn't to stay in that role forever. Before you accept a job, you should determine how it will help you develop your products. You know, talents, skills, and expertise. Improve your marketability and position you for projects with more responsibility and bigger budgets. However, since a job is temporary by nature, you need something to anchor it to. I'm thinking of an overarching theme that provides continuity so you avoid getting sidetracked. Okay, if you haven't guessed yet, I'm referring to a career. And unlike a job, a career is ongoing. Look at it like this. A job is to a career as a project is to a program. Meaning, a career is a business that's made up of programs that consist of collections of interrelated projects, for example, jobs, that assist you in achieving career success. As a matter of fact, you may be running several projects at the same time, for example, jobs, volunteer work, and even creative assignments. I want to caution you though, there's something you need to be aware of. As an ambitious professional, you may be tempted to map out every step you think you'll take along your career journey. However, you shouldn't do that. By detailing everything out, you may not save time for unique experiences you'll encounter along the way. And this is important. You see, it's these unique experiences that you'll be able to refer back to on future projects. So, remain flexible, get off the beaten path, explore opportunities you may not have planned for, and be sure to capture these experiences. And remember to think about how a job will help you reach your long-term goals before you accept it. Because you're not just looking to work a job, you want to grow a successful career.
So important to remember the difference between a job and a career. A career is a really long-term kind of a goal. You grow into your career 20 years, 30 years, 35 years. How do you do that is through various jobs. Maybe one job could be for 5 years, 10 years, or maybe one job can be for 1 year. We don't know. But there are multiple of these jobs which lead you to kind of build that career. And that's what the difference between job and a career is. So you need to understand the bigger picture of what is a career and where you want to be in your career path, right? And then what kind of jobs can lead you to kind of achieve that career path. Of course, in these examples, we are going to be talking about project management jobs, etc. But then in general, this philosophy and principle holds true, right? Let's listen more.
Marry yourself to a career path rather than a specific job. Why do I say this? Well, this isn't the 1950s when people used to stay in jobs for a very long time. Those were simpler times. Today, you shouldn't expect to work in the same job or even the same company for your entire working life. Because today, there's very little, if any, negative stigma to periodically changing jobs or even switching careers. Some might even say it's expected. This is a good thing. That is, if you're following a career path. Understand this, a career is a lifelong journey, while a job is temporary. So, let the path dictate your next move rather than the job at hand. With this in mind, consider the following primary career paths as you progress along your project management journey. You'll most likely start your journey going down the practitioner or consultant path. This is good for a couple of reasons. First, you'll gain experience, and you'll need this experience in order to graduate to the next level. Second, you'll boost your confidence as you successfully manage larger projects. Once you've gotten some practical experience under your belt, you can begin positioning yourself to go down the senior manager or leader path. If you plan on rising to higher levels in your organization, then this path is for you. I mean, who wouldn't want to be a VP or CEO one day? And finally, you could take the trainer or coach route. Instead of trying to be the rock star, you could help the rock stars, aka practitioners, do their jobs better. Look at it like this. Even the best athletes and entertainers need guidance. In fact, if it weren't for the managers, coaches, and trainers in their lives, they wouldn't reach their full potential. Keep in mind, no matter which path you set your sights on, make sure you're building a strong foundation for the rest of your career. This way, you'll have valuable talents, skills, and expertise to bring to the table when you pursue your next opportunity. Now, that's how you marry yourself to a career path rather than a job. Do you mind if I ask you a question? It might be a little personal, but trust me, it's for your benefit. Okay, here it goes. What's your why? More specifically, why do you want to be a project manager? And what motivates you to embark on this career path? You see, determining your motivation defines your goals. And the stronger your motivation, the greater the likelihood you'll reach your goals. For example, maybe you're motivated by taking on assignments you can take from beginning to end. If so, project management might fit the bill. It offers the potential to earn a six-figure salary, manage big budget projects, and be respected in your industry. Plus, besides sales and senior leadership, very few professions get more exposure in an organization than project managers. As you can tell, having the right mindset and motivation goes a long way, because this profession comes with its challenges. You know, critical deadlines, tight budgets, and let's not forget, demanding stakeholders. But there's a flip side, the sense of accomplishment and excitement that comes from closing out a project that took months or even years to complete. This is what should motivate you. Knowing what motivates you is great, but that's not enough. You need to be intentional. Let me explain. Motivation is a feeling, but you have to find a way to channel that feeling into a plan of action. One way to do this is to use your mind as a canvas where you paint a picture where you want to be. This single act provides clarity of purpose. It's this clarity that will open you up to a world of possibilities, possibilities you could have never anticipated. I'll give you an example. Early in my career, I was in accounting. More specifically, I was an internal auditor. I knew I wanted to transition out of accounting and into a field that provided more exposure and offered greater opportunities for advancement on the customer-facing side of the business. At that time, I had no idea how I was going to make this transition, but I could see myself in such a position. I began sharing my intention with key individuals. It took a couple of years, but eventually an opportunity presented itself that enabled me to leverage my accounting background in a managerial role. And wouldn't you know, the role involved a lot of project management. Later, I parlayed that experience into other opportunities, but it all started with me envisioning how I wanted to work and making my intentions clear.
So very important to keep in mind that determine your own motivation, determine your own goals. While of course we are talking about a project management career over here and what are the possibilities and etc., but this is applicable for anything else. So if you have determined, like, what is motivating you, then you can think. And the moment you think, as the author over here says, the moment that opportunity comes in, you're able to grab it. But if you are not able to kind of, be very sure of like, why would you want to take up a particular career path, etc., then when the opportunity comes in, then that becomes a little tough situation, right? So hence, I think being motivated is kind of, important here as a starting point, right? Let's listen more.
There's one more piece to the puzzle. Once you've determined what motivates you, envisioned your success, and made your intentions known, you have to take action. Yes, take action. This can be as simple as crafting your resume and sending it out, or attending networking events. At this stage of the game, it's more important for you to do something and get started. Otherwise, you could end up letting your career dreams and aspirations pass you by. Remember, time waits for no one. So go out there and turn your motivation into action. It's time to graduate your thinking. What do I mean? For starters, you need to shift your thinking from that of an employee to one of an entrepreneur. A simple way to do this is to think of yourself as an owner. This way, you'll run your career like it's a business, figuratively speaking, of course. In other words, entrepreneurial-minded project managers own their careers. Let that sink in for a minute. On a personal note, before I even knew what a project manager was, I was managing projects. I just didn't think of it as project management because my boss never gave me the title of project manager. Once I assumed a formal project management role, I began to realize project management is so much more than a title on your LinkedIn profile or a sought-after skill. It's the everyday practical way you choose to holistically manage the challenges life throws at you. Later, as I transitioned from corporate life to entrepreneurship, I began to connect the dots and came to the realization that running a small business is akin to managing a large-scale project. As a small business owner, you either adapt and grow, or your business will stagnate and die a slow or not so slow death. Consequently, you're constantly tweaking various aspects of your business, for example, offer, delivery, etc., in order to enhance what's working and discard what's not. All the while, you're hoping you can turn this one big project into multiple projects that will eventually lead to a sustainable business model. This realization caused a paradigm shift in my thinking. If small businesses are the equivalent of large projects, why don't project managers look at themselves as entrepreneurs? the concept of project managers owning their careers and projects was born.
Important mindset related conversation as to how you can start thinking if you want to be an entrepreneur and bring in project management over there, then how can you kind of leverage this as a career? So this is at a very higher level, right? What will be relevant for you in this group specifically is like, how can you start your career right out of college? Because all of you are in the college, and like, eventually you would be very soon wanting to kind of, get started in your career. So how can you get started right off your college? What are the things you may want to do? How do you graduate yourself to a complete project manager, or move into a more leadership position, or become a consultant or a trainer, establish your own business? These are all the various possibilities in the career right after your college, right? So let's listen to what those options are, right? So let me play the video there, because this would be relevant for you.
Think about it. You didn't get lucky and wake up one day with a 4-year degree. A lot of hard work and effort went into making it happen. Well, the same thing applies to your career. It's not built overnight. Rather, it's strategically built over time. You may not know the exact path your career will take, but you should know what your career goals are and how you're going to attain them. You have to stay motivated, and you do this by creating and executing an action plan. I know you're excited, so let me walk you through a 6-step action plan you can use as you transition from the classroom to the workplace. First, establish your goals. Ask yourself, what do I want? For example, do you want a job that pays X amount of money, provides you with unique opportunities, expands your skill set, and so on? What opportunities will I seek out? Second, target the right organizations. Ask yourself, which organizations will I approach? Which organizations will find the most value in my skill set? For example, consulting firms, Fortune 500s. Next, locate them. Ask yourself, where will I find them? Reach out to your network to see if they know of organizations with openings. Search on LinkedIn, look on job boards, etc. Where do hiring managers spend their time, online and offline? Fourth, take action. Ask yourself, how will I engage them? What steps will I take? For example, direct message, email. Fifth, determine how you'll propose to them. Ask yourself, what will I say? What value will I offer? For example, a fresh perspective, strong work ethic. Finally, think of how you'll ask for the job. Ask yourself, how will I seal the deal? For example, email, conference call, face-to-face meeting. Once you've completed this 6-step action plan, you can start executing on it. You'll want to get the most out of your experiences and maximize your learning. And you do this by taking your newly minted education along with your existing skills and turning them into rich experiences you can pull from later in your career. So get in the habit of pursuing opportunities that have the potential to help you grow long term. If all goes well, you'll land your first job. And this is how you transition from the classroom to the workplace. Many organizations have areas or even entire departments that suffer from disorganization. The silver lining is these organizations need people like you and me, people who can bring order to chaos and deliver results. Of course, I'm referring to project managers. We're the glue that binds what project teams implement to leadership's vision. However, most of us don't start our careers in project management. We transition into it over time. Start by taking an inventory of your skills and strengths. In doing so, look at the assignments you've excelled at in the past and carve out the experiences that are relevant to your soon-to-be project management career. Ask yourself, What previous experiences, work and volunteer, can I use to jumpstart my project management career? For example, if you have an accounting background and you really enjoyed working on process improvement audits, you could carve out the project management aspects of these assignments.
So this is what we were talking about in the previous examples, that project management or a career in project management is not only related to technical. It can apply anywhere. So if you have a particular background, for example, here it talks about account management, or if you have a background in accounts or a finance or a marketing or anything else as well, you can be a project manager in all these various options. So your opportunity is not only restricted to technology or technical, but it is much more vast. And that's a key takeaway you should keep in mind. Because a lot of times we think when we are talking about a project manager, it only means IT project manager. Yes, of course, that's a big chunk of the population. But if you have your project management ambition as a career, you can do project management across all various other functions too. And these are the examples what the author is kind of giving, right? Once we hear these examples, we will move on to the section where we'll talk about what kind of roles are possible, like leadership or consultant or trainer or what those are, right? But before that, let's see what are the areas, various areas in which you can work as a project manager and given your career goals. Let's listen to that.
Adhering to the budgetary constraints of the project is a pillar of sound project management. You can highlight this experience when you apply for formal project management positions. Next, seek opportunities that will get you exposure, positive exposure that is. Now understand, these don't have to be mountain shifting opportunities. They could be as simple as raising your hand to work on a senior leader's pet project or volunteering to solve an annoying problem others ignored. The main thing is that you get recognized by powerful and influential people in your organization for working on assignments that deliver value. And you'll need to build solid relationships. Just as you're developing your skill set, acquiring experience, and gaining exposure, you also need to grow an influential network. This could mean networking with headhunters, to getting involved in organizations where project managers attend. Many of the people you meet and volunteer with may be able to open up doors for you down the road. Also, it'd be a good idea to take some online training. There are many project management and business-related courses you can choose from on platforms such as LinkedIn Learning. The more knowledge you gain, the better you'll be positioned to get promoted.
So let's look into moving into a leadership position, the options available.
Do you want to rise to the highest levels in your organization? If so, you should consider pursuing leadership roles. Once you've gotten some practical experience under your belt, you can begin positioning yourself to become a leader, such as a VP or maybe even a CEO. Let's look at 3 ways you can prepare yourself for a leadership role. 1. Adopt holistic thinking. When problems arise, and they will, it can be extremely tempting to overanalyze problems by dissecting them into smaller and smaller parts until you come to the most logical conclusion. While this may be a good approach if you're a technical expert, it's not the best if you're positioning yourself to move up the ranks. A higher level of thinking is required, holistic thinking to be exact. Step back from the minutiae of data, look at the big picture, and start to figure out patterns. Once you have a good sense of the overall trend, you can then turn your attention to the underlying data. 2. Cultivate stakeholder influence. Stakeholders aren't robots, they're humans. And humans have subjective feelings we call emotions. Emotions can make humans unpredictable at times. This requires another human to use their intuition to read between the lines and figure out how to empower and motivate them to take action towards an agreed upon goal. As a leader in the making, You need to shine in this area. In fact, it's one of the keys to advancing in your career. And you do this by developing your interpersonal skills. More specifically, you need to engage and influence stakeholders. Here are a few of the interpersonal skills you'll want to focus on: leadership, diplomacy, negotiating, public speaking, emotional intelligence, communication, verbal and nonverbal. At the end of the day, you have to show your stakeholders, both internal and external, that you care about what's most important to them. You have to connect with them on a deeper emotional level and earn their respect and trust. 3, embrace rapid adaptability. Ask yourself, how can I be a change agent? It starts by making trends your friends rather than staunch adversaries. This requires a willingness to take initiative. For example, you most likely witness numerous activities and procedures that could be improved in your organization. You should document and review them. Next, pick 1 or 2 you can quickly implement and show a positive impact. The fact you're taking initiative is what matters most, but make sure you follow company protocol as well. As your organization's practices are streamlined and operations are incrementally improved, you will begin to get noticed.
And that's the starting part of becoming in a leadership position. So when the author says before you will know, you will be known as a change agent. So you will be starting to get to notice once you start taking those initiatives, once you start trying to streamline things together, work with the various groups, bring in that larger leadership thing. So if any one of you have an ambition to become a leader, then these are few things that you may want to do and look at, right? Not everybody can become a leader, right? We may have an ambition, but not everybody can become a leader, and hence there are other options as well, and you should know that. For example, being a consultant or a trainer is probably much more easier than becoming a leader. But does that mean that a consultant or a trainer is not as important as a leader? No, both are important, but both approaches are very different, right? So let's listen to if you have to become a consultant or a trainer, what are the few things that you need to do?
Independence. It feels so good. As you move along your career journey, your priorities might change. Rather than managing projects as a practitioner or moving into senior management or leadership, you may want a little more flexibility. If this is the case, you should consider becoming a consultant or trainer. You'll need to adopt the right mindset though. Look at it like this. Instead of trying to be the rock star, you could help the rock stars, aka practitioners, do their jobs better. In fact, if it weren't for consultants and trainers, organizations wouldn't reach their full potential. You see, corporate trainers and consultants are 2 peas in the same pod. On the one hand, consultants advise organizations and help them solve problems, while on the other hand, trainers instruct professionals who work at these organizations on how to identify and solve problems on their own. As a consultant or trainer, you'll have the freedom and flexibility to operate on a higher level than an individual contributor or project practitioner. You'll be able to approach situations with a fresh perspective and offer solutions no one's thought of before. And this will garner you more respect and ultimately help you advance your career. It all starts with the why. You need to understand what's driving the need for your solutions, consulting or training. The better you are at seeing problems through your client's eyes, the better you'll be able to help them overcome their challenges. Once you begin delivering your solution, for example, advice or instruction, clearly communicate how it ties back to their why. This way, you'll establish a baseline that will encourage your clients to focus on the goal rather than allowing their biases to cloud their perspective. Then you create value by filling gaps. This is where the rubber meets the road. For example, drill down into the organization you're working with. Ask questions that'll open your client up. Uncover areas where improvements can be made. Address the factors that are holding them back from reaching their full potential. Treat this process like an exploratory expedition instead of a monumental shift in how the organization operates. So, if the results are positive, you can keep going, and if they're not, you can assess what's not working and decide if it's worth fixing or abandoning the current expedition in favor of another one.
So that's the flexibility if you are being an independent consultant or a trainer. You can create your own path in terms of how you would want to kind of train the people in the organization. So that's another path you may want to kind of take, being a consultant trainer. The third and the last part of the career is if you want to establish your own business, not really working for anywhere else, but then you yourself want to kind of establish your own business, you want to be an entrepreneur, etc. So in that case, what is it that you need to do? So let's listen to that.
So you want to work for yourself, control your own destiny, be free, and make enough money to finance your goals and aspirations. You're probably thinking, sign me up. But hold up, not so fast. There are a few things you should know before you venture down this path. For starters, there's a difference between working for yourself and establishing a business. While you can be an independent contractor and work for yourself, you may not have established a business that's legally separate from you personally. When you're self-employed, there is no separation between you and your business. In essence, you are the business. On the other hand, once you incorporate, your business is separated from you. Legally, you're an employee of that business. And although you may run the business, you are not the business. Why is this distinction important? Well, many people who are self-employed see themselves as more employees for hire than entrepreneurs in the making, meaning they're auditioning for a job more so than growing a business. While there's nothing inherently wrong with being an employee for hire, you want to be crystal clear on what you're aiming for. Say, for example, your goal is to land a full-time position. In this case, it may make sense to not legally separate yourself from your business. However, if your goal is to establish a sustainable business, you should seriously consider incorporating. Either way, I want you to do something, and that is get off the fence and make a decision. Either think of yourself as an entrepreneur in the making and act like it, or focus on landing a 9-to-5, aka a job. If you see yourself as more of an employee for hire, then you'll treat your business like a series of short-term gigs. This is fine if this is part of a strategy to get closer to one. It's not okay if you see yourself as an entrepreneur in the making. You could end up hopping from one gig to another and living a life of feast or famine. In your haste to pursue the next gig, you'll leave a trail of long-term opportunities behind. What you gain in freedom, you give up in consistency. As an entrepreneur in the making, it's time to tidy up your business aspirations. The key to success in establishing and growing your own business is to turn short-term gigs into longer-term projects. Before you know it, the snowball effect will kick in and you'll begin managing larger and larger projects. Who knows, you might end up contracting with some employees for hire yourself. Now, this is how you become an entrepreneur in the making.
Great. So now that we have heard about the leadership position, being a consultant trainer and establishing your business and you becoming an entrepreneur yourself, let's look at what are the project management career best practices before we kind of end our course today, right? So let's listen to that.
Did you hear about the latest methodology? Or how about that new software that was released? It seems like a day doesn't go by without something changing. Remaining relevant nowadays is easier said than done. This is why you have to stay informed. But it begs the question, where should you get your information? I have some suggestions for you. For one, you should join associations. I'm thinking of ones geared towards project managers. For example, the Project Management Institute. These associations offer monthly and many times weekly updates along with the latest tools and techniques. It's like having a library of information at your fingertips. Next up, read publications. Now, I'm not talking about any old publications. I'm referring to ones that are specific to your industry. For example, if you're in the technology arena, you may want to subscribe to a publication such as CIO.com. Publications offer industry insights from a variety of experts. This way you don't have to search everywhere to get the information you need. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention you should also follow thought leaders. You can do this by searching for them on social media platforms such as LinkedIn, reading books and blogs, attending their events, both in-person events and online, taking their courses and classes. The worst career decision you can ever make is to not seek guidance from those who've mastered the craft before you. It's like trying to reinvent the wheel when a full-blown wheel factory is right around the corner. So, stop going at it alone. Keep in mind, what got you where you are today won't necessarily keep you there. How you spend your time outside of your working hours matters just as much, if not more, than what you do during your working hours. By staying on top of the latest and greatest happenings in the project management profession, you'll never have a boring moment. You will look at change in the same way a home run hitter looks at a fastball. All you have to do in order to remain relevant is connect the dots and watch the ball sail out of the ballpark.
All right. So we'll stop here, right? Because that gives you the best practices in terms of what you should be doing. And as you heard in again and again, I think one of the most important aspects that both the authors kept talking about is staying relevant. So staying relevant is probably the most important aspect, and how do you stay relevant is are the various examples that we kind of saw today, right? So so herein we end our discussion on project management, or what are the possibilities, best practices, career options, etc. Does anybody has any questions which they may want to ask or check with me from whatever we have learned today? I know there's quite a bit of information, and I'm hoping all of you would have probably made down the notes, etc. But does anybody have any questions which you may want to ask? All right. If there are no questions as such, then I think we are okay with today's class in terms of summarizing all about project management. You can always kind of let come back with questions or share these questions maybe next time and check. But I hope this was kind of helpful, because as I said, project management is something which is kind of very, very common and very, very important as a career option as well, right? So understanding this is kind of critical. So so I think we can end our class today. Harinarsi ma'am, are you there? Phoenix, Karnataka.
So 1 minute, sir.
Yeah.
Ma'am?
Numbers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Shweta here, sir.
Yes, Shweta. Yeah. So
Yes, sir.
I think we are okay with today's class. We talked
Yes,
about
sir.
the various aspects of project management and the career options, etc. And
Yes, sir.
currently the students don't have any questions, but in case they
Okay.
do, they can always kind of come back later and we can kind of answer. But I think for
Okay,
today's
sir.
class, this should be okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. Thank you everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, Harinash ma'am is in a meeting. Hello.
Yes, I have just spoken to sir.
Okay.
Okay.